This lecture will provide an overview for the final exam and preparation coming up at the end of finals week. As always, if you make flashcards, digital or analog, please email pictures of them to me so you can get extra credit for the exam. The first section in the exam will consist of multiple choice questions. These are going to be the items that are not in bold on the handouts. So you will want to go through and make sure that you have definitions for each of those handouts from the first third of the class. Terms such as naturalism would define a new style born out of realism, but now without the interest in politics or sentimentality, usually in staged realistic scenes. The dealer-critic system is going to be established in the late 19th century, thanks to people like Durand-Ruel, who will buy up large numbers of paintings of relatively unknown artists, and then inflate the prices, controlling the supply for this new demand. Pointillism will be a technique invented by George Seurat and practiced by others, whereby pure hue will be separated into various uniform dots that are meant to blend in the eye through what he called chromoluminarianism, creating a more vibrant experience for the viewer. Dynamogenous and inhibitory color schemes are going to be important for understanding color theory late in the century, whereby dynamogenous scenes are going to include upward moving diagonals in warm colors, evoking a feeling of pleasure. Inhibitory scenes are made up of downward moving diagonals in cool colors, leading to discomfort, lethargy, and numbness. The anxiety of influence plagues artists as they start questioning their role in the avant-garde and modernity late in the century. Artists like Renoir would have a type of creative impotence and would drive them to emulate older masters such as Ingres and those in the High Renaissance and compete with them, trying to outdo them. Now, the next section will involve slide identifications, whereby you will be shown works that are in bold on the handouts, and you will need to be able to identify them, artist, title, and date. Seeing a work such as this, you should be able to identify it, artist, title, and date. In this instance, you should be able to state it's George Seurat is the painter, Sunday Afternoon on the Island of Le Grand Jatte is the title, and the date would be 1884 to 86. The next part is going to deal with unknowns. That's going to be works by artists or in the style that we looked at and discussed thoroughly in class, but will then ask you to talk about the identifying elements associated with them. Looking at examples such as this, and if we asked you, what artist do you think created it, and you should be able to support that, you should be paying careful attention to the treatment of the subject matter and the style and realize that this is Claude Monet, who is most interested in the effects of light and atmosphere on his subjects, to where they are almost incidental, the subject being the time of day and the effect that has on the subject. A work such as this, you should be able to identify, given the rigidity and classical pose of the forms as being vertical or horizontal, almost in a classical relief, but showing the leisurely activities of people in the late 19th century. You should be able to identify this as Georges Seurat, the same artist as the Sunday Afternoon on the Island of Le Grand Jatte, for it also uses the same approach and use of pointillism. Next, you're going to have two works relating to significance. So these will be works that we talked about during class, and you will need to be able to say what you learned about them. If we were to show you a work that you have seen in this class and we spent a great deal of time discussing, you should be able to discuss its significance. So if shown The Starry Night by Van Gogh, you should be able to talk about how this is an expressionistic vision of the artist's state of mind as he was in an insane asylum, looking out into the night sky, contemplating death and, once again, the eternal transformation of souls into stars. Now, the next section, and the last for undergraduates, will be the slide comparisons, whereby you will be given a main theme and then shown two works to discuss in relationship to that topic. The first topic in the slide comparisons will have you discuss the way in which artists tried to capture modernity in the sense that it was understood in the 19th century. For instance, if you were to be shown Monet's Gare Saint-Lazare or the train station of 1877, you should be able to identify this as modernity in both how it is shown and the subject. That being, the railway station was seen as the essence of modernity with technological advances and the rapid movement of people, time, and space. The way in which it is shown also captures that by showcasing how everything is ever changing and ever fleeting and in flux. In the same way, if you were to see Caillebott's Paris a Rainy Day, you should be able to note that while we see a very photographic representation, the way in which we interact, engage with, and see this street scene is meant to show us the effects of modernity socially and culturally, whereby people are going to be separated, even in close proximity. They are not interacting with one another. There is a disjuncture in social relationships and fleeting interactions. The second essay in this will relate to how artists try to show us inner truth, right, by capturing this in an outer reality. So in other words, how are they going to be distorting or showing things that are not part of reality, but to convey something that is more true by way of human nature? In this example, we would say that Van Gogh is trying to show us how he felt in Arles in the night cafe with the use of colors in an arbitrary fashion, whereby green would represent his jealousy for what this man, this cafe owner had, and the blood rage that he felt as a result. In similar fashion, Rodin, in his Fugitive Amour, or Fleeting Love, also is trying to show us not what two dejected lovers that were murdered by the woman's husband would look like, but instead this universal idea of losing love, of something that we cannot hold on to. Thus something that's more universally true by way of human experience than something that is photographically representational. Finally, the graduate essay is going to relate the notion of modernism, as we understand it in the 20th century, really having its root in the 19th century. We ask you to write an essay on how artists responded to the challenges of trying to represent this new world view of how things were changing, of what the new world was like, as well as the various subjects they chose to do it and the techniques to accomplish it. So you can do so in any number of ways, but please give 3 specific examples when doing so.